Welcome, everybody. I'm Bill Lindsay with Xencelabs Technologies, and we are here on our live channel today. We have a special guest, Luciano DiGeronimo, and he's an Emmy nominated for compositing supervisor with over 20 years in the industry. I took a look at his IMDb list, and let me tell you, it is quite extensive. It's amazing these shows this man has worked on. The Venture Brothers, I could throw a couple out there. You know, the Venture Brothers. He started working also at animated Alias, Lizzie McGuire, Goodnight Moon, and other Sleepytime Tales. One of my favorite little books growing up, Goodnight Moon. And also he's got quite a long history. Matter of fact, he was Emmy nominated for his work on Mr. Robot. So he's worked on Luke Cage, The Punisher, Iron Fist, Halston, Prodigal Son, 911 TV shows, Flight Attendant, and my favorite, Blue Bloods. He's got, again, the list can go on and on and on. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now to Luciano and let him have a little bit of fun here and show us a little bit about my unexpected VFX journey. Luciano, take her away.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Luciano, compositing supervisor, presently at Fuse FX, New York. For a long time, I was, I was around the industry, but as is the title, this was not the plan. And I'll tell you about that and I'll go get into it. So first off, I don't get paid to do what I went to school for. So let that sink in for a bit. It's not to say that school is not important. It is very important. It's just the choices that I made at the time were not what I ended up doing. So too much to my parents' chagrin, this pretty much is a fact. And what I studied, I don't really do. But the lessons I learned from those studies absolutely takes place in almost every day of my life because of what it was. So being that I didn't go to school for this stuff, I had to carve my own path. And that can take some specific challenges on how to do, because nobody's giving you instructions. There's no tutorials on where to go from here. Oh, I just like this. Where do I want to go? Nobody was able to tell me these things. Plus, back then in the 90s, there weren't really many schools for visual effects. There were animation schools, sure. But it really was like, when I decided what I wanted to do, was like I had to figure things out and just kind of work the flow. And the hurdles you're going to get are immense, but they shouldn't stop you. They should jump over you. You will get hit by walls every single time, no matter what you choose. So things change. You want to do one thing. My major is a perfect example of that, and I'll get to that in a minute. Figure out what to do next. You need to pivot. You need to move it along. So let me start off by showing you a reel from Fuse. This is kind of what we've been doing for the last couple of years. So. Okay, so if I haven't been watching that video a couple times in the last couple of days, you would have probably seen me squint just from the memories of the tough time we had. Anyway, so in the beginning, so we probably all have, like, everyone has this idea of what they want to do. Well, when I wanted to do something, I didn't really figure out it was what it was until much later. So what are my creative influences? We all kind of start with that. So, I mean, everyone my age, everyone anywhere, Star Wars, of course, you know, Star Wars stories. But honestly, Star Wars wasn't that much of a big influence on me from a career. I love Star Wars. I still love Star Wars on my shirt. But it wasn't what the driving force was. I just enjoyed it. These are the things that I enjoyed as a kid. And as a kid, I grew up with 70s and 80s animation, Schoolhouse Rock, Saturday morning cartoons, you know, all the different things, you know, Disney and, you know, and Looney Tunes. These are the things that I thought were really interesting. It wasn't until later that I've, you know, realized what they were. Even the animated stuff, the Ray Harryhausen and things like that, I didn't learn until much later that name. And wow, you know, I always loved that stuff, you know, and then I learned how it's made, and it makes it much more interesting. So, you know, like I said, Schoolhouse Rock, you know, Saturday morning cartoons. I mean, I was a huge fan of animation. It's like, you know, as every kid was, but I mean, I remember seeing since I'm a compositor now, I remember watching movies as a kid. And the opening credits back when it was film, they would just superimpose the credits on top of the opening titles onto something. Now, because of the way the film works, there's a film gate. It's always shaking. And those credits are rock steady. And I remember noticing that, being like annoyed, like, how come it's not tracking onto it? How come it's floating? And that always bothered me, which is silly. But yeah, nowadays you would never see that happen, because we would actually, even if it was film, we would track it. And the other is that no one wants to see that stuff nowadays. We would stabilize the plate and everything. But moving on. But ultimately, film wise and artistic wise, my influence was RoboCop. That was the first film that I saw that I was just blown away by the storytellingness of it, by the cinematography of it, the writing. It was what I noticed. And yes, it's told through an ultra violent way, which Paul Verhoeven, the director, did on purpose. He made it super violent so you have sympathy for the character. You know, you can go any way of getting sympathy for a character, but he chose to go that way. But just how the journey of this character is what I noticed. And I thought that was just the coolest thing. And that was where I realized about film and things like that. And architecture. Why would it be architecture? Well, my parents are architects. My whole family are architects. I'm the black sheep. I do not do it. But because of that, because I was lucky to be that environment, I got the artistic sensibility, and I knew what to look for and what to appreciate. I mean, by just going to museums and like being around the artwork that they would have of buildings and structures and things like that. It was just naturally, it was learning through osmosis in a way. Could I do anything with it? No, not really, which is why I would need to continue the work on it. But the interest was always there. And I was always into puzzles and challenges. Christmas time, I was known for actually when I would get a gift that was a puzzle, I would actually solve the puzzle before everyone stopped, finished unwrapping things. So they stopped giving me puzzles. But that was just, one of the things that I was interested in. Things that were hard, I had an attraction to. And that was maybe part of the downfall of my choice of school, but, I'll get to that in a second. But also, it wasn't, because that is what I used every day, is puzzle solving and going after challenges and solving those challenges. And ultimately, that is what I do as a visual effects artist. But as a teenager, what do I want to do? Of course, it's like, animation, everything like that. Well, I just loved anime and video games. I wanted to pursue it. I wanted to know more about it because this was the thing I didn't know. Architecture, I knew. Art, I knew. I knew how to do perspective. I knew how to do all these things because I was around artistic people in my family. And I never saw that as a challenge. It was an easy thing for me to do. But what I didn't know was about games and anime, and because, Japanese animation. But that was the things that was where I was pushed towards. Things that the unknown is really what I was moving towards. So when I decided to go to school, I did Japanese and physics. So interesting combination. So why? Well, simply because anime, like I said before, video games and anime, that's actually where the source of it was. But also I was into, science and physics, and I was not really a language person in high school. I was more like the math and science of everything. I remember when I was 11, I remember hearing that the science that I thought was really cool was called physics. And I'm like, oh, I got to pursue that. That's actually really neat. And I just kept reading upon it, and every article or whatever, I would just read on it. And Japanese was a challenge. Remember, I wasn't good at language. So why am I taking a language? Well, because it's a challenge. That was the absolute reason. And in hindsight, it wasn't exactly the best reason. It needed to have something else. But where I wanted to go to school, so these two things are what I wanted to pursue. That narrowed it down to 6 schools in the whole country. So I ended up being at University of Rochester, which is closer to home, which is fine. I think University of Arizona, Stanford were 2 of them. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the other ones, but it did narrow it down because I wanted to major in Japanese. I wanted to go to Japan. I really did. That was the immediate thing that I wanted to do. Not just to play games, but just that culture I wanted to do. Noise here. So the culture and everything like that, I wanted to, get through. So I pursued that. I went to school for that, but then I dropped physics because, ironically, I didn't want to sit behind a desk and do research for the rest of my life. Funny thing is, I'm sitting behind a desk and doing research on R&D and all these things. But one of the things my physics professor mentioned is a tool. Language is a tool, and what you use the tool with is up to you. And that could be the same for just pretty much everything. Anything that you learn is a tool, and how you use it is up to you. So at the time, I'm like, did I screw up? What did I not pursue the right thing? I mean, I narrowed it down. I could have gone to other schools, but I wanted the Japanese and physics. I wanted that pair. But now that one half is not there, maybe I should have done other things. Maybe I should have, chosen another school. But no, it's not a misstep. I still had, my goal was to go to Japan. So I actually was able to study abroad. I lived in Japan for almost a year. And that moment was really the life-changing moment for me, where before was very shy, didn't want to do anything. But when I realized that, going to Japan, I'm in another country, I'm going to experience things I'm never going to experience again. I'm not going to, it's seize the day moment. I'm going to take advantage of that every moment. To hell with this shyness, to hell with this hesitation. Every moment I'm going to do something. And that's the thing that I did when I was over there. And that I carry that with me to this day. I'm taking advantage of the moment, not missing out. You really can. It's like going to it. So a little history of that is, one of the things I loved doing was I wanted to play games, I wanted to write for games. So a popular gaming magazine in the 80s and 90s, Electronic Gaming Monthly, and its counterpart was Famicom Tsushin. Famicom Tsushin was made first and EGM modeled after that, but whatever. and quite frankly, I've always liked the covers of Famicom Sushin. They're just more artistically done. Anyway, so I wrote to EGM once, and I actually had my letter printed. I want to play games for a living. They printed it, and they said, these are the things you want to do, you want to pursue, and everything like that. And if I should have followed all of them to the letter, but I still pursued it. I still followed that advice. I did learn to Japan. I went to Japan. I learned the language. I learned more about it. I was able to snag an internship at Famicom Sushi when I was in Japan. When we were at the school, they asked, what do you want to do here? And that was my immediate jump. I wanted to go there. They were kind enough to arrange this internship where I went to this place, and I didn't write or anything like that. I just saw how the world works. This is literally the first experience I had seeing professionals, seeing the world, the working world outside of my parents' office. They do and create things, but this is a magazine where, yes, the stereotypical very hardworking Japanese guy was there. One time I showed up there on Wednesday, and so 2 days later I show up on Friday, and I said hi to the guy, and I'm like, noticed he's wearing the same clothes that he was on Wednesday, and he, without hesitation, goes, I've been here 3 days. And I'm looking around, and there's guys sleeping under the desk and everything. It must have been a deadline week. It's like, wow, this is pretty intense. But all he did, he's like, okay, what do you want to do? I'm like, what do you mean, what do I want to do? So it's like, he leads me over to this cabinet, floor to ceiling cabinets, metal doors, and open it up. And I swear it was like, the suitcase in Pulp Fiction. You just open it up and the light was there. They had every single game they've ever reviewed in this cabinet. And I could pick any game I wanted and just just have fun and play some games. And they weren't necessarily the cartridges. They were actually the EEPROMs, which is back in the cartridge days for those younger folks, when they had systems actually to plug in. Well, the Switch actually has gone back to cartridges, but they used to be little mini boards, like, green boards with chips on them, encased in plastic. And that's what we used to play games, not discs or downloads or anything like that. So this was before it was in production, so they didn't have the cover art. It was just the little daughter board, and I would go through, but they would label. They had a little Post-it note on them and would label all these different things. And I would play games that like, ooh, this isn't in America. I haven't played this game. So this was it was like a lot of fun. It was just using those, just playing all those different things. But then one day when I was there, the crowd started developing over there. Now, since I'm into Japanese games, I'm into Japanese role-playing games. I always loved, I played D&D as a kid, Zelda, all these different things. And so I was familiar with all the, the JRPGs, as they call Japanese RPGs. So there's a crowd developing over in the corner. I'm like, oh, what's going on? I go over there, and there's like, oh, there's a new game that came in. They just got it in. Everybody in the office is crowded around, like, to check it out. It's like, well, it turned out that it was the new Final Fantasy. And this is Final Fantasy VI for Super Nintendo. And everybody is crowded around, and nobody, and I really mean nobody, this is a newspaper organization, magazine. They get the press release. This is the first time any sort of public view of it was. It was so amazing just to see the joy on everybody's face, just seeing this stuff. And I mean, yes, they're playing it and they're reviewing it, or they're going to review it, but it was it was a sight to behold, just having everybody there. And of course, I was a fan. I knew of Final Fantasy. I thought it was great. And to that end, Final Fantasy is, like I said, a fan of, like, I was even more of a fan when I finally got to play this game and getting more into it. And in Japan, a lot of them, like all the character designs, and from an artistic standpoint, this picture here, this was done by Yoshitake Amano, who was a famous Japanese artist, and it just, that style was well known for Final Fantasy and all these different things. I just fell in love with his artwork. Again, artistic sensibilities. Never went to school for art, but I still love this stuff. So it was actually really cool to have these things getting together, and Final Fantasy and everything. So that was just really awesome. But in the end, when I lived there for a while, it was tough. And I got back. Semesters were reversed. There's a 3-month break in the winter and then a shorter month for the summer. I needed time to adjust. There's something called re-entry shock. Is when you come back from a place, you think you're going to be okay, but psychologically you're not, because everything has changed. You've been away for so long. So I suffered from that big time. So this is, I pretty much had a mental break. That when I got back, I worked really hard learning Japanese and getting this stuff, and then I got back and I had to immediately go back into school. I should have taken a break. I should have sat around. What it was is I would read a page of a magazine or book. I'll get to the next page, and I couldn't remember what was written on the first page. I could not remember anything. It just was. It was just really hard, and I got to be so much. I decided that one thing that came out of that is that I didn't want to pursue Japanese anymore. It was just too much. Not that it was too much of a challenge. It's just this mental break. It's like this. The interest was losing big time, but I was going to finish this up. I was in school. I had to get a degree. That was the goal. My goal of going to Japan, I did it. Cool. But then now, once I was done, what am I going to do with this? As my physics professor said, this is a tool. What am I going to do with it? So I experimented a little in college, tried to get maybe go into business, take some business classes, maybe take a film class. And so I took a film class there. And that film class was actually really awesome. I took a Japanese film class as well, learned about Kurosawa and all these different and various directors, which was like, this is actually really cool. I'm kind of liking this. So kind of some of those sparks and inspiration were there, just learning more about film. And something that always stuck with me is that the film class that I took, this first day, the professor's like, this semester you're going to learn how the sausage is made, but don't let that not have you not enjoy the product. Just because you know how it's made doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy it. You know how a screenplay works. You listen to a movie. Yes, when I watch a movie, I look at 25 minutes in, I'm at plot point 1. Doesn't mean I enjoy the movie any less. I still shut that off and I'm able to watch it and enjoy what it is. And that is a word of advice, is that's for any production. All the things that I've worked on over the years on TV, I still watch. I'm tuning in. A Prodigal Son we just did work on. I was like, ooh, there's a new Prodigal Son. I'm totally into watching the show. I just have that disconnect. So that helped me with that, where I can learn about how it's done, but then I can still enjoy it in the end. But at the time, that's all in hindsight. But at the time, was this another misstep? Oh, I was like, I didn't know what to do. This was a turning point. What did I need to do at this time? But this, as I said, this is not quite another misstep. I was able to figure out. I was able to experiment in other ways. I went to the film school. I started, the business school, all these different things. So in the end, I graduated, but I took a year off. This stuff was fading away. I didn't want to do anything. My parents were able to, they knew a friend of theirs, guy, John Martinek, who used to be a recruiter for Japanese firms, wanted to help me out trying to get a job. I'm like, sure, I have this skill set. Why not? I didn't want to work at a bank because that's the only things I can find. That was just so boring to me. I needed something creative. I needed something artistic. So working there at the office, talking to this guy, he wasn't able to really find me anything, but he did what he can. He was a nice guy. But at my parents' office, just doing stuff, that's where I discovered 3ds Max and Photoshop. Now, Photoshop I've used earlier, but realizing that moment when I would be doing layout for architecture, they do, of course, design buildings, stuff like that. But as every company does, they have to sell themselves. So in the process of selling themselves, they create these, kind of portfolios and kind of a layout of what it might look like. So I used Photoshop. They gave me the image and I just Photoshopped it to what it might be after the restoration. And I realized that I love doing this. I love manipulating the pixels and creating something new out of nothing. And my animation background was like 3ds Max, like, oh, there's a program here that I can do these animation things. I knew a little bit about digital animation. I was a fan of like Tron and all these other visual effects things that had that animation in them. Last Starfighter and all this early stuff. I thought it was super cool, but I thought it was well beyond what I can do, because this was done on Silicon graphics machines or higher end things. But now this is on something we have this at the office. We had a crack of it, but whatever. Early stuff. But it's like, but I can use it on a PC. That's awesome. So then my interest in 3ds Max started happening. So I realized this, and then so I told told John Martin, I realized what I want to do. I want to do visual effects. And then he goes, my brother works at ILM, and so I'm like, oh, can I meet him? Can you tell him? This is in the 90s. It's like no direction at all. So I met Tom on the phone, and he gave me the whole spiel, and he basically said of what everything was. Now, remember, I didn't know what compositing was. I didn't know what shaders, anything. I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. So he introduced me to CineFX. So he said, read CineFX. It tells you everything you want to do. So I read CineFX. That was my school. That was my education, was this magazine. Unfortunately, this magazine just this year was able to not do prints, but I do have almost every. I'm still missing 35, but I still have almost every issue. Now, this is a quarterly magazine that it took me 2.5 months to read. It was super thick, tiny letters. It was great. So this led me to getting a first job, looking around, calling up for animation. So I'm going to try to speed these things up. I think I'm going a little slow. So my first job was at Tape House. Now, what Tape House is, a family of companies. It has editorial, and I was in the ink and paint division. So they did Saturday Night TV Funhouse with Fun Review Audio and Biggest OK Duo, Ex-Presidents. That's what they were known for. So that's what I was able to do. So I was able to do ink and paint and tablets and not tablets and bring things together. Howard Stern radio show we work on the ink and paint. What I meant to say is it's like when you paint the stuff, the cells, and you're just digitally doing the paint like in Photoshop. So like, oh wow, this is actually kind of cool. We did the Howard Stern radio show, Sabrina. But then the reality of this is that, wow, this is actually work. This is a lot of work to do this stuff. It was hard. And the tools that we used, I have to say that even back then in the 90s, I was a fan of the tablets, because you can go back and forth between it, click, dot, click, dot, click, dot, and you were working at least 8 hours a day on a computer. Your wrist gets tired, but holding a pen, that thing is fantastic. It was great. And I was, at the time, we had one tablet in the studio, and I would get there early just to fight for that computer just to get that tablet. So I was always doing that. And then later on with 3ds Max, Maya, it became 3-button, and I got to use a 3-button with the stick. And this, if for a moment, is plug-in is with the good folks at Xencelabs. We have this great little tablet here, which is fantastic. It has a nice feel texture as the pen, and it has this little device that I'm actually using to control the presentation here. And I don't know if it's on camera, but you can customize the buttons, and I even have a little composite button, which does nothing, but that's the point. So moving on. So I was living the dream. I was doing everything. I came full circle. I loved anime. I was on animation. It's like, doing this stuff. I got to work on Schoolhouse Rock. We did new Schoolhouse Rock. One of the things, I had a sound session with these legends, the original creators, Phil Kilman, George Newell, and Tom Yohe Jr. Tom Yohe Sr. unfortunately passed. But I'm in this room with everybody, and they're just shooting the shit, talking about old stories and everything. It was amazing just being there. I didn't talk. I was just listening. And it was just amazing thing to do. We then worked on Lizzie McGuire, which allowed me creative freedom to do things where we had a problem. We need to get a solution in there. So how about we do a 3D thing? I can do a toon rendering. I can get it all in there. And so that creative freedom taught me then to learn the 3D and everything like that. And then what happened is we had a situation where we had Goodnight Moon and other Sleepytime Tales. The animation was done, and the client wasn't happy with it. It just wasn't working. And then I was just like, let me try something. So I brought it into Max. I modeled the room, and I did a toon render, scanned in the textures. This render, what you see, is actually from the computer, from 3ds Max. It's not from the book. And I did a slow flyby of the whole room. Client loved it, brought it back. It was nominated for an Emmy, and was I given a thank you? No, not even a mention. But it didn't matter. I did it. It's something that I was very proud of, and I was able to save the project. It would have been canceled without it. And then we had this other division of Tape House that did DVDs, and they did encodings and things like that. And they got this new project of this new CG movie that I haven't heard about it. And it's like, what is this? And it's like, and I was like, was it Final Fantasy? He's like, yeah, that was it. I'm like, oh, can I do something? It's like, well, the first thing I was able to do was to get a VHS preliminary copy before it was released. But they had to do the encoding, and they did a behind the scenes where then they asked me they had a bunch of questions for the directors who are Japanese. They asked for translation. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And so I was able to actually, in Japanese, still translate questions for them and, ask what it was. And then that's what's actually in the documentary on the DVD. So it's not VFX, but I still helped with Final Fantasy, which was actually a really awesome thing. And for the record, the one time I used my major. And so done, check, moving on. So this was awesome. What could happen now? This is actually really great. Well, this. So paraphrase the Beatles. It was 20 years ago yesterday. The 9/11 happened. And I'm sure you heard all the stories. Where I was is in the morning, I got on the news, watching the news of something hit the buildings. And I can see from my apartment where these pictures are taken from. Plane hit missile hit it. No, we didn't know what it was. I saw I was sitting outside the window, I had no screen, and just sitting and watching, fiddling with my camera. And I look up, and plane hits. Boom. A few seconds later, felt the shockwave of the explosion. And that was not visual effects. The reality of that explosion was like shocking. So that was just how it hit me. But immediately I knew, and my girlfriend at the time, who I've since now is my wife, she was in the city working at Tape House as well. So I knew that they were going to shut down the city. So I actually still went into the city to go after, because they were going to shut it down. I was going to be with her. And that was the plan. How it hit the industry, no one wanted to come to New York anymore. It was really frightening. But you can see from the third photograph, if I actually pan to the left, people forget that it was actually a really nice day. It was a perfect 70-degree, no clouds. It was just so nice. Like, you really forget that. But anyway, I'm going on. But yeah, people were afraid to come to the city. I was watching companies shut down. What do we do? Well, we have to carry on. these things are out of your control. We don't know what to do. So in every downtime, what to do is that what I like to do is use the time for training. Always train more. That was the one thing, because I was never went to school specifically for this thing. I took advantage of every moment that I had to do more, to train myself, because, well, maybe because it's because I didn't do it in the past, but also maybe because I wanted, there's always something more to learn. So we moved on, we got better, we trained better, we actually tried to get better. So we ended up being, my first feature. And that feature was Lizzie McGuire, of course. So I was watching that and doing more training, new influence. So then eventually there was a movie that I saw, blown away by the animation. I mean, so much so I went back the next day, I saw it. That was Dobby. Seeing Dobby, the character animation in his eyes, just such a perfect, to this day, such a perfect time. When you watch the movie next, watch it when Harry goes in, "What are you doing here?" He shuts the doors, and he just that little jolt. He is so a bundle of nerves. He just, that little thing is just like so amazing. We watched it the other night, and I'm still amazed by it. So because of Lizzie, we actually got into the Tribeca Film Festival to do a panel. And that panel allowed me to see the other presenters who were going over. And there was this panel on the physics of Harry Potter. I'm like, ooh, physics, cool. So again, physics. So it was my fourth panelist looked at the names. Oh, and before that, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead, is that, so when I saw Dobby, I stayed at the end of the credits, and who was done? It was David Andrews. That was the lead animator. I'm like, oh, I got to remember that name. That was just so amazing. If I ever, I knew a guy at ILM, maybe I can contact him and just thank him. He just great job. So looking at the names of the panels, there are 4 physicists and David Andrews. Ooh, I got to get in. I tell him, like, can you get me tickets to get to this? I'm like, yeah, sure. So then I met David Andrews. And that was another moment where it's just, he gave me animation advice, all in the eyes. Everything is just, it was just fantastic meeting this guy based on the influence of the name. I pursued it. I went after it. But all things in the end, Tape House closes at the end of the year. They were acquired by Postworks, acquired everybody but us, and we were making the profit for the company. But is it another setback? No, because I got to go freelance. And I'm going to try to move along a little bit more. So I took the time off to learn. I basically studied 3D Max. I was able to go to SIGGRAPH. It was a convention I've heard about for years, but because I was working, life moves on. I couldn't do it, but hey, I'm on my own time. That's the benefit of being freelance. You can do whatever you want. So I took advantage of it. I went to SIGGRAPH, but I'm new in that world. I'm just trying to do 3D animation. I may have a couple years in the industry, but still, being humble, I'm new. I don't know anything. I'm around like legends. I'm walking around and John Knoll is walking around. And years later, I got to have lunch with him, which was fantastic. But just looking at, again, these legends I'm seeing there, even like the names of the people you read in the credits are like, these are all people that are there, seeing their badges. And it's like it's amazing. And then meeting other people, like I've met a couple people that still to this day I'm communication with. So that's the direction, is just finding new people and all these things. So going freelance, I had to learn the rules. What are the holes, 1090C? So again, the business side of things, which isn't really that interesting, but it's what you got to do. About West Coast versus East Coast, journalist versus specialist. You can argue to the end of the earth what it is, but in the end, it's like what you're expected to do versus what you should do. And I wanted to be a generalist because I wanted to know everything. I like the idea of doing one thing just bored me. And New York City, New Jersey, really, I'm living there, is my home. I'm East Coast. I did not want to go to LA to go into the Lion's Den, even though it was what expected. It's like, no, I want to learn what I can and do what I can here. So I need to get myself known. What to do? short films. Well, build relationships, like I said before in SIGGRAPH. I've heard of Spike and Mike before. We did actually SNL did a couple of things, got into Spike and Mike. Like, oh, that was fun. That's how I kind of introduced to it. But going to SIGGRAPH, I saw the E-Theater. Total influence. My jaw was just on the floor, just like, wow, this stuff is so good. And I thought about what was good and what wasn't. I mean, you can have this most amazing thing in the world, but if it goes beyond a certain amount of time, you're like looking at your watch, getting bored. So I went through all the E-Theater as much as I could and I created a short film called Pen versus Pencil. And my intention was to actually get into E-Theater. That was what I wanted to do. But as usual, I made it super complicated. I made it short. It's only 1 minute. But it has 11 characters, 11 personalities. So that was, that was difficult in itself, but it was just me doing it. And a lot of the other things that I see in these festivals is like a team of people, like, 20 people. I'm like, nope, just me. I had help doing music. That was it. But it got into Nicktoons Festival. It got into LA Shorts, and it got into Comic-Con. So that was another thing. It was like, one of the early Comic-Con things. Now, did I win Comic-Con? No, but it should have. But whatever, I still got into Comic-Con. I was with these other people. It was really great. So the lessons learned is like you just pursue it, you just do it. It was a great experience that I just did this. I'm running short on time. We would actually show it, but I'm going to skip ahead. It's on. You can look up the original Pen versus Pencil, and it'll be there. It's on YouTube. But then I had to move on. So moving on to bigger projects and features, realized that I had to be that VFX hobo. Had to go to places, but I'm married now. I'm starting a family. I didn't want to move around, but I can spend a couple weeks somewhere. Sure. So in 2008, I went to Vancouver. Great city. Got to work on Aliens in the Attic. If you've heard of it, okay, fine, whatever. But it was still a great time. It was an experience where Canada works 8-hour days. It's national. And we got the stuff done. It was so relaxing, such a great atmosphere. Interesting side note, the tagline, "They came from upstairs." That was the original name of the title of the movie. Sounds like a horror movie. It's a kid's movie. So it's not. So then in 2010, Toronto, and so I got a call from a guy that says like, "Oh, we got this project, 3D conversion for the project." It's like, "Can you tell me what it is?" No, can't tell you the name, but it's about a boy who does magic. It's an ongoing series. I'm like, ooh, I get to work on Harry Potter. So even my wife was like, "You're doing this." And that's the thing about being the VFX hobo, is the support of your family and your significant other and anyone, is to be able to do these things. Now, I was only going for a couple weeks. I was coming back. And that's actually the important thing. I'm not going away. Bye. See you in 6 months. Just 6 weeks just to do this. Now, there's a whole long story I can get into about, the Harry Potter thing. But no, I got to work on it. So that was like another dream goal. And then coming back to New York, got to work on Boardwalk Empire. It was great. When Hurricane Sandy hit, I was able to do, I couldn't get into the city. The trains were closed. So they were able to upload the stuff. I downloaded it here, where I am now, work on stuff at home. At the same time, I got to work on Life of Pi. I got introduced and worked with Ang Lee and Tim Squares and the team in editorial in New York as their in-house compositor. Worked on so many things. I personally delivered over 100 shots, which is more than probably 80 of them are in the movie, which is 10% of the movie. And when they filmed it in New York, they had to go back home. 20th Century Fox's film pulling them back home. They wanted someone to finish the shots of stuff, the new shots they shot. And they called me up and they're like, "Sure." It's like, "What can you do?" Now, here's the thing. Any company could have done this, but they knew that working with me, it would be far cheaper to do. So no matter what I said, it would have been significantly cheaper than any studio. And it worked on this phone coming up, pulling it back home. They wanted someone to finish the shots of stuff, the new shots they shot. And they called me up and they're like, sure. It's like, what can you do? Now, here's the thing. Any company could have done this, but they knew that it working with me, it would be far cheaper to do. So no matter what I said, it would have been significantly cheaper than any studio. And it worked on this phone.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear you now.
Nice.
I hear you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal was. Maybe something on your end. Who knows?
No, wasn't anything on my end. Like I said, I just finished one of these things.
Yeah, but you just restarted, right? Did you say you just restarted?
Yeah, I just restarted Zoom.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was a Zoom. Yeah.
Zoom something, but I don't know what the deal is.
Okay, so I keep on forgetting. Am I supposed to do something with YouTube Live?
No, you don't have to do anything.
Oh, I don't have to do anything at that. I'm just good to go right now.
Oh wait, what's going on?
What?
Why are we live?
Nope.
Why are we live over there?
Are we live?
Yeah, it's weird.
I thought we're not supposed to go live for like another 5 minutes.
I know, but Zoom seems to be messing up.
It says we're going live in 2 minutes and 16 seconds.
Yeah, but you were just live.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's see. There's 6 waiting.
Because it says Luciano is live.
Huh.
That's really weird. Zoom's
All right.
been doing a weird thing all day though.
Can you see my can I'm backlit hard with that window open? But I gotta keep it open because otherwise it gets really hot in here.
It would open the side window and close that one.
Well, it is open, but what?
Hey, Bill. I didn't do anything.
How's that?
I don't know. Zoom is doing some weird stuff today. Are we? Can you still hear us?
Yeah. I can hear you.
I just asked you. Can you still hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm just good to go right now.
I'm hearing you guys. I'm hearing Steve talk. I'm hearing you talk. I don't hear you right this second. There's a delay, but you guys just pulled our live feed.
Are we live?
I'm telling you, I'm watching you guys instead of watching Luciano.
It says we're going live in 2 minutes and 16 seconds. Interesting. Okay, well, let's see. There's 6 waiting. Huh.
All right, why don't you jump off your Zoom channel? We'll see if we'll get us back.
Can you see how I'm backlit hard with that window open? I gotta keep it open because otherwise it gets really hot in here.
Yeah.
Well, it is open, but
Still watching Steve. Can we oh wait, looks like we're back. All right, thank you.
we are?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
waiting the probably 30 second delay.
They're 30 second delay. You can start though. You can continue on.
All right. So, sorry about that delay. We got cut off. So just like how networking pays off, the network went down. Anyway, so my buddy Kim Lee got me he was working next door at Fuse, met for lunch. I met with Greg Anderson, who then hired, so had an interview. He hired me the next day. And so I became EAGov for staff. Now, why would I become staff? Now, at the time, now everybody has their different needs. Working freelance is fantastic. You get to do whatever you want. One of the things that was amazing about the VFX hobo life is that when I was in Toronto, there's so many people, everybody there was like from somewhere else. And they were literally looking for stamps on their passport. It's like, there was a conversation that was like, dude, there's a job in Reykjavik next year. We should all get together and go for it. And I was like, no, I'm going home to my family. Have a good time, you know? So it's definitely for the young. Again, I would, if you can do it, it's fantastic, but do what you, but don't wreck your life, and don't do what's necessary for you. So staff, the year before, right before, in fact, that month, there was a bit of a dry up in the industry where all these companies lost their work for whatever reason, for various reasons. And it got scared. I have a family to take care of. I have these things. I have to do work. Life has to go on. So, wow, this is actually pretty bad. And then I got this, staff offer. I'm like, yes, I will do it. I'm tired of actually hunting for jobs, doing freelance. So one of the benefits is I get to do these many projects. Over the years, you get to do whatever. Or some are good, some are bad, some are ridiculously tough, and some are ridiculously easy. Doesn't matter. It's all a job. It's all fun. Like, do I watch all of these shows? No, but it's all entertaining. So you look. I've said to many times, like, the people, like, we're not saving the world. We're just entertaining it for a little while. So as long as it's entertaining, it's great. The idea about being staff is that you get to have a core group of people that everybody knows, and opportunities to grow into these positions. I was able to grow into CompSoup because they knew me, and they were able to say, hey, you work well with everybody else. Okay, here's more of a leadership role. So I was able to do that. And because this core group, we knew everybody, you could then get VES and Emmy nominations. Or if you're qualified enough for it. But luckily we are, and we're a great team to do, and we got it from Mr. Robot. Now I can show the video from Mr. Robot. We actually are kind of running low on time. But
Mr. Robot Episode 5 was presented as one continuous shot, in which we contributed over 40 seamless edits. This stitch was one of the most complex. The camera alignment on set was especially challenging due to the confined space and the transition from crane to Steadicam. It was not possible to get the cameras into the same position for both takes. The solution involved match moving both cameras for both takes, and creating a new virtual camera that blended the two together along with timing adjustments of each. Once the takes were projected onto geometry, the two cameras were aligned, and the challenge became correcting for differences in the actors' positions as well as objects in the scene. We then use a combination of projection, morphing, and patching techniques to complete the effect. In this dramatic moment, we were tasked with creating an impossible camera move. We photographed location plates for a moving matte painting of the ground. The final ground level element was then used to create accurate reflections in the CG windows. We acquired detailed references and photogrammetry of the building to quickly block out our CG asset, and allowed us to spend more time refining the details of the facade. The final stitch of the episode was intended to be a simple split screen. However, between the camera alignment and the need to preserve the rhythm of the flashing emergency lights, we decided to instead clean plate a section and do a full head replacement. These 3 moments are just a sample of a wide range of challenges that we solved in over 40 stitches. This unique one-take episode was incredibly challenging due to the numerous invisible effects required to create the illusion.
so that one was actually one of my favorites to work on, because it's invisible effects. It's fantastic. And so the takeaways from here, final advice, one last thing is really influences everywhere. just be careful. It's a small industry. You know, everyone, and one of the phrases I like to say, everyone knows something different from you. Find it and learn from it. I think can't take credit for that line, but it's a great line. Even the smallest connections can make a difference. Life's a journey, not a destination. Things will change. For me, a goal not reached can lead to another one and to another to head towards. That was my case. Like, I may have wanted to head in this direction, but then when getting there, I'm like, I don't like that. I'm going to pivot and go in this direction. But as long as you're moving forward, everything is clear. Be open to path changes, be able to pivot. Like I said, remember the names of people, read the credits, look for the people who influenced you and find them, ask them. Practice, practice, practice. Everything you always can learn something new. And a lot of times, especially in production, the challenge is simply time. How can you do this within the certain amount of time? And have fun. That's really what it is. We're entertaining people. You shouldn't be any less entertained. So that's it. Thank you.
Awesome, Luciano. That was great. I'm going to throw one quick question in there. I got several, but this one was kind of interesting. What software applications do you use in your compositing?
We use Nuke. In projects past, I've used Shake before, but then Shake was brilliant, but then it just moved on. It was actually in Vancouver that I learned about this program Nuke. It's like, they're for Aliens in the Attic. We use Shake, and they're like, that was when Apple bought them and they were actually getting rid of it. So they're like, this new program Nuke. So I went home and I trained on Nuke so that I can get a job using Nuke. But once you know the techniques, it doesn't matter what it is. It ultimately, for me, it goes back to the program we used for ink and paint was a program called Animo. Animo uses node-based compositing techniques. So I learned about that mindset long time ago. So learn the techniques, doesn't matter what program you use. I can do the same things in After Effects. I was like, I want to do this. It's different, structured differently, but you can still get it done.
Awesome. Luciano, thank you very much. I appreciate us taking the time to interview you and let you go through all that. That was really great. I want to appreciate everybody watching. And I'm sorry I didn't get to address all the questions. Hopefully we'll be able to get to this at some point in time, but we need to sign off. So we got a couple more still to go this afternoon. So feel free to watch our channel. And again, Luciano, thank you very much. That was really great.
Yeah, thank you.